Now, welcome back. We're going to focus a bit on election results now. The Inkatha Freedom Party in KwaZulu-Natal has literally snatched yet another large and highly contested stronghold of the ANC in Msunduzi Municipality in Pietermaritzburg, where the ANC actually lost its outright majority. And we're going to look into all of this and, of course, all of the other election results from Wednesday, the by-elections that were held in KwaZulu-Natal, of course, also in the Eastern Cape, and we are going to maybe look at the Western Cape, a few interesting ones there. So I'm joined now by elections analyst Wayne Sussman, and we're going to try and work through as many of those results as we can. Wayne, always good to have you and always good to talk about these by-election results.
Thank you, Sakina. It's great to be here.
So let's start in KZN. And of course, very interesting, given what's playing out in many a municipality with the coalitions that are in a state of flux, really, in KZN. So let's start in Pietermaritzburg and of course, what played out there.
Great. Before we go to Pietermaritzburg, let's just set the scene. In KwaZulu-Natal, we expect the IFP to do well in rural northern KwaZulu-Natal, in places like Ulundi, in places like Mtuba. When we go to the provincial capital, I want to make another point. We know that the ANC is traditionally, their strongest centres are the southern part of KwaZulu-Natal, eThekwini, Durban, because there's so many voters there, but they really overperform in the provincial capital, Msunduzi, Pietermaritzburg. So here the fact that the IFP have won a ward off the ANC. And let me remind the viewers, in 2016, the ANC got over 66% of the vote in the Sweetwaters township near Pietermaritzburg. And for the ANC to now lose this ward to the IFP is a significant development. And yes, there are always caveats, and we've got to be honest. The party, Abantu Bato Congress, stood aside in the election and probably endorsed the IFP. But the IFP still attracted a lot of EFF support and have now taken this ward, and it's an historic victory, and it weakens the ANC in its Msunduzi stronghold. So it's significant now, and it's significant on the road to 2024.
Significant also, the IFP eating into, and more than eating into, because the EFF was dealt quite a heavy blow here. If we're looking at what's happening in KZN. But obviously, Wayne, this has to do with these coalitions, one would imagine.
Correct. So what I think this is telling us in this particular round of by-elections is that voters are unhappy that the EFF and ANC are now working together. They might also be unhappy about load shedding, about water, about crime, and they are channeling this energy towards the IFP. We go to nearby Mshwati, which is part of the same district as Msunduzi, but it's more KwaZulu-Natal Midlands, an area where the ANC in 2016 got 90% of the vote. What do we see happening there? The ANC falling to the low 50s, the IFP jumping from 5% to 45%, coming very close to winning one of the safest historic ANC seats in the whole of the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Again, we see, what did they do there? Winning over ANC support, but also eating into a lot of EFF support. And that played itself wherever we went in KwaZulu-Natal on Wednesday. So
the voter turnout, just at this point to perhaps touch on, over 50%, in Mshwati around 53% voter turnout. The significance of that?
Great question. So what we expect in by-elections, the narrative is that people don't come out and vote in by-elections. Remember, okay, in the 2021 local government elections, alarmingly low turnout, okay, very concerning. In many by-elections since November 2021, and it played itself out on a Wednesday, we are seeing turnout which either matches or surpasses what we saw. So these aren't fluke results, the IFP winning, because there's a large proportion of people turning out to vote, and they are moving over to the IFP.
And, you know, I'm just looking through, you know, we can touch on a few more. You spoke about Nuza Hill, and again there in the Eastern Cape, this is, you know, looking at what happened there with Ward 15. Let's just talk to those results. So you have the Eastern Cape, that particular election, votes cast around 66.27%, 30.7% voter turnout there, though. So perhaps just to start start at that point?
So I just painted a gloomy picture for ANC supporters who might be watching. We move over to the Eastern Cape, to the area of Lusikisiki, and here the ANC went from 66% to over 80% to the vote. So what's happening in KwaZulu-Natal is not playing itself out in the Eastern Cape. The ANC remains rock solid in rural areas of the Eastern Cape, and this is going to be crucial. Again, we always going to speak about the now. How does it affect local government? How does it affect who my ward councillor is, but we're also on the road to 2024. If I'm the ANC, I'm saying I need to make sure that when it comes to 2024, I get as many people in the rural parts of the Eastern Cape and as many people in Limpopo out to vote, because those areas, unlike KwaZulu-Natal, unlike Gauteng, unlike the Western Cape, remain rock solid for the African National Congress.
Stellenbosch in the Western Cape. Now, I thought this one was quite interesting.
Interesting part, okay? So often when we think of wards, we think that the same types of people live in wards. Okay, this ward has a very affluent white Afrikaans area called Paradyskloof, and then Jamestown, which I think is a middle-class, predominantly coloured area. So the DA won over 80% of the vote. You saw them fall to the mid-70s here. I was interested in who is going to pick up these votes, okay? We have seen over the last few weeks that Good hasn't been the party which is affecting the DA. Was this going to be Good's opportunity in Stellenbosch? It wasn't their opportunity again. It was more the African Christian Democratic Party. So the DA should of course be concerned. They're falling from the 80s to the mid-70s, but Good should be very concerned. And we know that Patricia de Lille is now the Minister of Tourism. She has to focus on a new portfolio, but also focus on her party's flagging fortunes, because we've now had 3 consecutive by-elections where Good haven't overperformed, but instead they've underperformed. So that's the takeaway, that the ACDP was the party which people were disgruntled with the DA were going to in this by-election.
What about the Patriotic Alliance? Because, you know, that's another party that obviously Good should be concerned about.
Great question. A few weeks ago, there was a strange by-election where the DA failed to register a candidate in the city of Cape Town in Kensington. Good, on paper, should have been the favourite to win that by-election. It was the PA who won that by-election. We saw the DA, PA, Good, and a whole variety of parties go head-to-head in a ward which includes the Cape Agulhas Lighthouse, the southernmost tip of Africa. Again, there, the PA beats Good. So we're seeing the PA again emerge as alternative to Good. So if I'm Good, I'm greatly concerned right now because they are not seen as alternative to disgruntled DA voters in the Western Cape. This is very, very interesting to watch. Gaten McKenzie, let's just speak about him briefly. We expect him to do well in rural areas like the Karoo, rural areas like the Cedarburg Municipality, beautiful part of the country by Citrusdal area. But now you've seen him win a ward in Cape Town. Admittedly, it was a strange circumstance because the DA weren't in the ballot, but doing better and better in other parts of the Western Cape. They are going to be a big threat to the DA. I'm not going to say they're going to match the DA in 2024, but can they do enough to bring the DA below 50%?
They obviously are not likely to match the DA in any way, shape or form, because this will be their first entry into a general election as the Patriotic Alliance. We've seen them show in the municipal election, but even then, you know, there was, of course, some sort of indication that they were performing really well in your traditional coloured areas. But are they able to translate? You know, if we look at the by-election results, say from the last local government elections, are we seeing the Patriotic Alliance making any sort of meaningful inroads?
The Patriotic Alliance are definitely shaping up South African politics. By the way, so are the Inkatha Freedom Party and so the Freedom Front Plus. What's the thing which links those parties? They appeal to very different constituencies, but they're very deliberate about who they primarily appeal to. And I think the Patriotic Alliance, we recently saw there's a fascinating by-election. People say, oh, Wayne, don't go too granular. But if you go granular, if you go to the voting district level, you'll see an amazing takeaway. There was recently a by-election in Kimberley, and I thought it would be the ANC versus the DA. I thought the PA would finish third. The Ruadepan area, which is more similar to other parts of the Northern Cape, a predominantly coloured area, than the Platfontein area, which is where the Kwe community comes from.
The Kwe and the Kwe, yeah.
Correct. So the PA finishes third in that by-election because they did poorly in Platfontein, which is one of the 3 voting districts. But in Ruadepan, they won both of those voting districts. That's a fascinating result. It tells you that the Patriotic Alliance, whether it's in Ruadepan, the southern part of Johannesburg, 9 Kensington in Cape Town, are making an impact on predominantly coloured areas across the length and breadth of this country. They are certainly a party to watch going forward.
So, you mentioned the PA, the Inkatha Freedom Party, the Freedom Front Plus. What do those 3 have in common? As you mentioned, they appeal to specific demographics in our country, and some would even say that, you can classify them, and I know the parties themselves would probably balk against this, but people would say you could perhaps, some have said the Patriotic Alliance is a coloured nationalist party, you would say Afrikaner nationalist leanings with the Freedom Front Plus and with the IFP Zulu nationalists. And I say again, I know the parties will probably say there's no such, but people have described them as such. And if you look at who they appeal to in the main, you would find it along those kind of lines. Is that going to be a major factor going into next year's election?
We saw it being a major factor in 2021 with the added caveat of local solutions. Off air, we chatted about Standerton, your hometown, if I'm allowed to reveal that. They're a local party one, the Lekwa Community Forum, put in a coalition government. Those local parties won't be a factor in 2024, but I agree with you 100%. There's a strong possibility. I'm going to make this announcement now. I'm going to say it first here on national television.
10th of March, 7:53.
The ANC, the DA, and possibly even the EFF might all lose support in 2024, the 3 biggest parties. The ultimate beneficiaries would be parties like the Freedom Front, IFP, and the Patriotic Alliance and other versions who appeal to very specific groups. So on the one hand, in the ANC in the mid-90s, try to appeal to all South Africans. The DA in 2016 appealed to many, many South Africans. The EFF in 2019 appealed to large swaths of South Africans. They made coastal breakthroughs. What we're seeing right now is that many South Africans are saying, let's rather retreat into a safer, more identity which we can relate to, whether it's coloured nationalist, Afrikaner, or Zulu identity. Of course, those parties are going to challenge that. They want to appeal to more voters, but that seems to me what's playing out.
And then, of course, there's also the question about coalitions and the sort of coalition agreements that are being struck at the moment already at municipal level, and how the voters are going to view this going into the 2024 general elections, because as we said, in KwaZulu-Natal, it seems as though that break from the coalition of the EFF with the IFP, the voters in the by-elections at least seem to have punished them for that.
Correct. The lines are becoming much clearer. Let's just deal with the IFP first. It seems that the IFP, the Democratic Alliance, the Bantu Bato Congress and Team Sugar, this party in Newcastle, which has now won this by-election against, they've won this ward twice against the ANC. It used to be an ANC stronghold. That is one line. Okay, that's one camp. Then you're seeing the ANC working with the EFF. The challenge of the EFF and the Patriotic Alliance, who are working much more with the ANC than the other opposition parties, is that if voters continue to do this, so voters in this particular, I'm not saying this will always hold, but voters in this latest round of by-elections rejected the EFF. The EFF fell from the teens to below 4% in all the KwaZulu-Natal by-elections. Is that because they are perceived as working with the ANC? If that continues to hold, the EFF will have to revisit working with the ANC. However, I'm going to contradict myself because the Patriotic Alliance are even more ensconced with the ANC because they're not working with the DA or other opposition parties anywhere else in South Africa. Yet they are continuing to grow. So it's very, very interesting, but the lines are becoming clearer, and that's going to be important because we know that in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and maybe in some scenarios the Western Cape, Coalition governments, maybe even the Northern Cape, coalition governments could be on the way there. Where will the EFF work? Where will the PA work? Who will they prefer to work with? At the moment, it's the ANC. Will it remain like that? It's going to be an absolutely fascinating election.
And just as we close this off with regard to Gauteng and how things are shaping up here, again, instability across the board. You know, one day there's a mayor, the next day there's no mayor, then the mayor's back in Tshwane. We know what's happening in the city of Johannesburg, and of course then you have Ekurhuleni and other smaller municipalities around Gauteng as well. Again, coalitions, and we've been told that this is going to be the future for South Africa, but there's been great instability. Is this something that you believe the voters are starting to take into cognizance when they are casting a vote based on the recent by-elections?
It's a beautiful morning in Johannesburg, calm weather. That calm weather is not playing itself out in Gauteng councils. Gauteng is coalition country, and it's not a good example for voters. And I imagine voters and residents are highly upset at the way coalitions are going, wherever they are and whoever's running those coalitions. I mean, I'm hearing that even in Mfuleni now, which is in Vanderbijl Park, that coalition, which is currently led by the ANC, might see some changes. Mogale City, Krugersdorp, that can go any day. Tanya Campbell in Ekurhuleni, DA, she's probably living in borrowed time. We saw what happened this week in Tshwane. It's absolute chaos. And it's vital for parties to show that coalitions can be sane and can be normal, because it is going to be the new normal and the reality, certainly after 2024.
Wayne Sussman, never enough time with you, but thanks so much, as always, for helping us break that down. Elections analyst Wayne Sussman discussing the recent by-election results with us. And let us know what your thoughts are at Morning Live SABC.